Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Okay, it's the second day in a row that I intended, just to spread it around, just to start with what's going on with the Democrats. Because they had, when they're calling a debate last night, it's a gold mine. It's an absolute gold mine. Many, many predictions I made to you are coming true, such as millennial women abandoning Hillary. And some former NAACP guy, Ben Jealous, has come out and endorsed Bernie Sanders. I think if Hillary is any hope here, she does her black dialect when she goes to Selma. She needs to come up with a New York Jewish dialect in order to get to Bernie Sanders' crowd. It is amazing. But, folks, what's happening on the Republican side has to take precedence here over what's going on the Democrat side. And I'm going to do everything I can to get to the Democrat side of things because it's easily half the story, and it's fascinating in and of its own right. What's going on the Republican side? Holy smokes, it's childish. I mean, here we are. We were on the verge. I mean, we come out of Iowa, and 3 of the top 4 finishers are without doubt Reagan conservatives. And now all of that's been turned upside down, and the winners are under assault on this crazy thing about Ben Carson and his supposed leaving the race and so forth. Let me ask a question. Has anybody in Iowa, I bet since I mentioned this, somebody's going to now, has any voter in Iowa, any caucus attender, shown up and said, you know what, I wanted to vote for Ben Carson, but I saw that tweet from Ted Cruz and I changed my mind? Has anybody said that they intended to vote for Ben Carson but were talked out of it because of all of this? And I ask you what I asked yesterday, even if this ended up being a factor, was Ben Carson cheated out of 25,000 votes? That's what he would have needed. He overperformed. Ben Carson did better than what the polling data showed. It was Ben Carson and CNN who telegraphed this whole notion that Ben Carson was leaving the campaign, going back to Florida. Cruz is on CNN last night, and he points out to them that it was them, their reporter, tweeting out what Carson had said, and CNN was so ticked off they spent the rest of the night calling Cruz a liar. And now Trump's out there threatening to sue anybody that walks and to get himself back in this, and it's I don't know what it is. Excuse me, not a circus. And then, folks, I was so happy today. After 4 weeks of sheer frustration, I finally, with the help of a lot of people, solved my battery life issue. I'm not going to bore you with the technical aspects, but my 2 desktop computers were constantly trying to upgrade, sync, and do a number of things with iCloud, which was causing... iCloud was then in constant contact with my computers and iPhones and laptops, which means their processors are always running. Anyway, a fix was to sign out of iCloud on both desktops last night for a half hour, 45 minutes, signed back in, and it worked. And then 10 minutes ago, the churn started again. Right before this program starts, the churn started, just like it was the 4 previous weeks. And I'm sitting here saying, what a lousy time for that to happen. So there's a lot of frustrating things going on out there, and hopefully we can bring some of it to a screeching halt and get back to the things that really matter to people here. And as I know, campaigns are what they are, and victory is what it's all about, and going after people is how I understand all that. This is the big leagues. I'm an adult. But this Ben Carson thing, I mean, he started it. CNN propelled it. And Ted Cruz has apologized for it, more so than anybody else. Cruz could have easily blamed a staffer for it. Cruz didn't do this. Cruz could have gone out there and said a staffer did it and satisfied what Carson wanted and fired somebody, but he didn't. What did he do? He went up there and he took the hit himself. That's a sign of tremendous character to me. He didn't take the easy road and blame some unnamed staffer and then make a big show out of firing that staffer, like most people would have done, and then go on and on about how outraged he was and how this is the kind of thing that nobody should want in our politics, and how he's going to make sure it doesn't ever happen again. And he didn't do any of that. Went out there, said, yep, apologized for it, did not admit any guilt. There any guilt to be found here. Yesterday, I had the advance warning of the public policy polling number. It was embargoed. I respected the embargo. It was embargoed till today. But somebody went ahead and ran with it last night, so here are the details. I actually think, and this is my intelligence guided by experience, I actually think that polls right now are still too soon to give us an honest reflection of the post-Iowa mindset in New Hampshire. You know what I also read today in my voluminous show prep? I read that the people of Iowa, people of New Hampshire, consciously avoid being a rubber stamp for Iowa. I actually read this. I read a story which said the people of New Hampshire, they take note of what happened in Iowa, and they make a point of making sure to select somebody new, somebody different. Now, for that to be the case, however many thousands of people are going to show up in a New Hampshire primary on Tuesday, they're all going to have gotten together, or they're all going to have received a memo, or they're all going to have conscious, independent thoughts and agree on the same thing. They're going to go into that ballot box, into the polling place, and they're going to all say, you know what? We cannot vote the same way they did in Iowa, because that's not what we in New Hampshire do. Now, they may have statistics that show this is what happens. They may have statistics over the years that New Hampshire primary voters do not vote the same way as Iowa. But to try to tell me it's because New Hampshire voters take note of what happened in Iowa and make sure they do something different? How in the world would you coordinate that? You know, this is the kind of crazy analysis. It sounds really good. Wow, it sounds like it's really insider stuff. You stop to think about it. Who in the world could make that happen? I know, the guy who's in charge of gasoline prices going up and down in America. That's who. That's who could do that. Do you believe that, Snerdley? Do you believe that this is how everybody going to vote in New Hampshire on Tuesday is going to go in there and say, okay, Cruz won Iowa. We can't be a rubber stamp for that. Even if I like Cruz, I'm voting somebody else because I don't want New Hampshire to look like that. Come on. Yet that kind of stuff gets put out there, and everyone goes, yeah, man, the stats demonstrated. Here's the details here in the public policy polling. Yeah, I saw Jimmy Carter has endorsed Jimmy Trump. Jimmy Carter's in there endorsing Trump. So the establishment's getting their ducks in a row here. Public policy polling, newest national poll, finds the race on the Republican side tightening considerably in the wake of Donald Trump's surprise loss in Iowa on Monday night. Note that who is this? Yeah, it's public policy polling writing this. Note that they could not write this in the wake of Ted Cruz's resounding victory on Monday night. Have you stopped to think what Ted Cruz did on Monday night? Have you stopped to think what Ted Cruz overcame to win the Iowa caucuses? $8.5 million arrayed against him, all of the ad money arrayed against him, all of the so-called, he's not even a legit candidate because he was born in Canada, all these are religious revival evangelist nutcase, all of that stuff thrown at him, phony Hispanic, all that, and he still wins. And after that victory, Ted Cruz is the first Hispanic American to ever win the Iowa caucus. He is the first Hispanic American to win any presidential primary for any party. It didn't happen in the Democrat side. The first Hispanic American to win a presidential primary happens to be Ted Cruz, who happens to be a Republican. And furthermore, it was the religious right that propelled him to victory. And I knew this was going to happen precisely because of that. The establishment and everybody else anti-Cruz is arraying all of their arsenal and resources against Cruz precisely, well, not just precisely, not exclusively, but the big reason is because the religious right or the evangelicals were the margin of victory. We can't have that. No. We have got to destroy that. We have got to shoot that down. We can't allow that to be the message coming out, say the opponents and enemies of Cruz. Oh, my God. The Republican Party's out there saying, these are the people we want to get rid of. These are the people we think are causing us problems. The pro-lifers, the social issues people. Oh, no. They're the reason Cruz won. First, Hispanic. What's the Republican Party? I saw Lindsey Graham on TV this morning. Talk about why he likes Jeb. The reason we can't nominate Ted Cruz is because we have to reach out to Hispanics. Hispanic voters hate the Republican Party and think the Republican Party doesn't like them. Hispanics think the Republican Party mean-spirited and exclusionary. And I'm sitting there with Senator Graham, and Hispanic just won the Iowa caucus. An Hispanic American, Ted Cruz, just won. And you're sitting there saying that Hispanics don't like the Republican Party because they don't think they have a home. They don't think the Republican Party likes Hispanic. He was serious. He was going on and on and on about it. He's pushing Jeb. Obviously, it's the establishment hanging together. But it was classic establishment thinking 101. What the Republican Party has to do to win. We've got to expand the base. We've got to go way beyond our base. We can't rely on our base. We've got to reach out to Hispanics. Women hate us. We've got to do something about that. We've got to change the way people think of the Republican Party. And Ted Cruz just didn't know wait. He's the first Hispanic American to win a presidential primary, period. Any party, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Martian, you name it. And here comes public policy polling. PPP's newest national poll finds the race on the Republican side tightening considerably in the wake of Donald Trump's surprise loss in Iowa on Monday night. Trump's lead has fallen to just 4 points. He's at 25%. Ted Cruz is at 21%. Marco Rubio is at 21%. Ben Carson, who's not there in New Hampshire, is at 11%. Jeb Bush, Kasich, and Rand Paul are at 5%. Chris Christie, Carly Fiorina, 3%, and Jim Gilmore still in the race at 1%. Santorum had 0 supporters in the public policy polling final poll. Mr. Snerdley, can you help me out? Who did Santorum endorse yesterday? Yeah, was it first reported that he endorsed Cruz? Because I remember getting emails from people yesterday afternoon. Remember, I was immersed for hours after the program yesterday in the fix for my battery life crisis, and it was a genuine crisis. Few people knew. I haven't bothered to bleed on you about this because, of course, it's not important to anybody but me. But I was working on this for hours last night. I thought I got an email from somebody that said, my God, Santorum endorsed Trump. It turned out to be not true, right? He endorsed Rubio. Well, anyway, 0 here in the Republican race. PPP says that Trump's 25% standing reflects a 9-point drop from their last national poll, which was taken the week before Christmas. They say that it reflects an overall decline in Trump's popularity with GOP voters. In this poll, the public policy polling poll, Trump's favorability has dropped a net 17 points from a previous plus 24 to now plus 7. The actual numbers on favorability, 58 favorable, 34 unfavorable. I think that's right. I don't know which is which here. They don't say 48-41 is what it is now. So if he's, 48 favorable. So he's dropped 17 points. It says that Rubio's the candidate with the real momentum in the race. He's up 8 points from his 13% standing in their poll right before Christmas. And that Cruz is actually pretty steady in his nationals. This is New Hampshire, not New Hampshire, by the way. It's a national poll, which of course doesn't mean much right now. New Hampshire being the focus, plus a Republican debate coming up Saturday night. As I say, I'm not sure we've enough time has passed from Iowa for the polls that are like the Real Clear Politics average, the rolling average in this poll. I don't know if enough time has gone by for there actually to be an accurate poll now, the post-Iowa mindset of people in New Hampshire. Let me take a brief time out. We'll come back and start with the audio sound bites on this, whatever you want to call it, that's going on in the Republican Party about all this. We'll cover it all with the sound bites and added news bites that we've got here as well. Your phone calls, as always, part of the mix in yet another exciting excursion into broadcast excellence. Don't go away. You know, folks, I have a question. And Barack Obama, he goes into this radical mosque in Baltimore yesterday. He talks about how Islam has always been a part of the fabric of America. And I really stopped and said, really? I didn't know that. I didn't know that Islam had always been such a major. But anyway, he's constantly talking it up, is he not? President Obama is routinely defending, talking it up, promoting it, talks about how awesome Islam is all the time. This is one of the most beautiful sounds he's ever heard, is the morning call to prayer in an Islamic country. He says it's the most peaceful, most giving religion out there. That the mosque call to prayer, one of the most beautiful sounds in the world. And at the same time, he's out there. Look what he says about Christians. He says he is one. Look at it. He talks about those bitter clingers, and they hold on to their guns when they're nervous and when they feel abandoned, and they go out there and they cling to their religion. And they do all of these other things that make the establishment. My question is, given all this, why did he choose to become a Christian? Yeah, I've always wondered that. He's such a defender and promoter of Islam. And on the other hand, he and his party are constantly denigrating Christians. I don't care what the issue is, whether it's guns, whether it's gay marriage, any cultural or social issue. You get his bitter clinger comments. I've always wondered about this. No, I'm not saying anything. I'm just asking a question. How did he end up choosing Reverend Wright's church, given his public statements on all of this? By the way, there's a Democrat debate tonight. There's a Republican debate on Thursday night, or Saturday night, just continues to intensify. And a friend of mine sent me the following note, a great idea for a drinking game tonight during the Democrat debate. And here it is. Every time Crazy Bernie or Hillary Clinton mention a new free government program, which is the contest they are having, who can come up with the most free stuff? And who can? Bernie, wait till you hear this soundbite. I've got to get to this today. Bernie gets a question from a guy upset that Bernie's going to raise his taxes. The guy says, I don't know, I'm not a gazillionaire, I'm not a millionaire. What do you want to raise my taxes for? And Bernie says, no, you'll be fine because of all the new free stuff you're going to get. And the guy says, oh, okay, cool. It was fine with him. He'd be happy to pay a tax increase as long as there's going to be new freebies. Now, Bernie didn't use that exact language, and that was the message. So the drinking game is, every time Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton mention a new free government program, you grab somebody else's drink and take a swig. Not from your own. Just to kind of illustrate the point. Jimmy Carter grabbed soundbite number 26. This is yesterday in London in Parliament. Jimmy Carter addressing the House of Aristocrats, i.e., the House of Lords.
If I had a choice of Republican nominees, let's just say, for instance, between Cruz and Trump.
You do?
I think I would choose Trump, which may surprise some of you. But the reason is that Trump has proven already that he's completely malleable. I don't think he has any fixed opinions that he would really go to the White House and fight for. On the other hand, Ted Cruz is not malleable. He has far right-wing policies, in my opinion, that would be pursued aggressively if and when he might become president.
Well, they better happen because he's been practicing your brand of politics here for 8 years minimum, and we're about to end up in the gutter, in the sewer. We got to do something fast. And we're back. Your guiding light, Rush Limbaugh. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. There's a headline up on Drudge. This is the kind of stuff we need to get back to. Border agents ordered to stand down. Might as well abolish immigration laws. Washington Examiner. Border agents ordered to stand down. Well, all this is going on. Our borders are wide open, as much, if not more so, than ever before, and Border Patrol agents are being told to shut down. There is not even any pretense here. In a shocking reversal. This is Paul Bedard, by the way. Used to be at U.S. News and World Report, now over to Washington Examiner. In a shocking reversal of policy, U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents are being told to release illegal immigrants and no longer order them to even appear at deportation hearings, which is essentially a license to stay in the United States. A key agent testified today. What's more, the stand-down order includes a requirement that the whereabouts of illegals released are not to be tracked. Brandon Judd, who's president of the National Border Patrol Council, said we might as well just abolish our immigration laws altogether. Testifying on the 2-year border surge of immigrant youths, Judd said the policy shift has been prompted by the regime and the embarrassment that just over half of illegals ordered to appear in court actually do. In other words, the regime is embarrassed that their policy is so bad, so they're just nuking the whole thing. If only half of them are showing up, to hell with any of them showing up. Don't even require it anymore. So the Border Patrol agents basically saying, we've been told to stand down. If we're not enforcing the law may as well not even exist. The willful failure to show up for court appearances by people that were arrested and released by the Border Patrol has become an extreme embarrassment for the Department of Homeland Security. Let me read that to you again. The willful failure to show up for court appearances by persons that were arrested and released, and nothing happens to them. These are people committing crimes that are not even being tracked and followed down, or followed and tracked down. And it's said to have become an extreme embarrassment for the Department of Homeland Security. This would mean agents and employees, not the cabinet secretary or Obama. I mean, the point is, okay, we've got laws. We're making a pretense of enforcing them. We arrest. We give them court dates. Half of them aren't even showing up. We're not following them. We're not tracking them. We don't know where they are. We may as well not stop them in the first place. Point is, they're embarrassed that so little is happening after they are doing their jobs. To the audio soundbites, we're going to start here, as I told the broadcast engineer, with F. Chuck Todd on the Today Show today with Savannah Guthrie. They were speaking about Ted Cruz's campaign, telling voters about Carson's leaving the race because of a report on CNN. Now, let's review this. Let's review what we know just before we get to the soundbite. Somebody at CNN, forget the name, tweeted that Carson was leaving the race and going home to Florida and then to the National Prayer Breakfast. That was a CNN tweet. And the CNN reporter had to get it from somewhere. And he did not get it from Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz didn't know. And by the way, this is 10 minutes, 20 minutes before the caucus begins. This is between the hour 5:30 and 6:30 p.m. on Monday. Somebody had to tell the CNN reporter that Ben Carson was going back to Florida. The CNN reporter tweets it. The other campaigns see it. It clearly says that Carson is returning to Florida, not going to New Hampshire, South Carolina, but is going to attend the National Prayer Breakfast today. So the Rubio campaign and the Cruz campaign get in gear and point this out to their people on the ground, and they pass it around as though it could be that Carson or CNN is saying that Carson is leaving the race. He is what the CNN tweet said, going back to Florida. Well, then the results come in, and Carson outperforms what the Real Clear Politics polling average showed that he would do. Cruz wins when Trump was forecast by the polls to win by 4. That shakes up everything. The Democrat side's a mess. The Democrats and the Des Moines Register, a whole bunch of people still embarrassed over what happened there. Because of all the embarrassment on the side of the people who lost, then somehow it ends up that the Cruz campaign engaged in a dirty trick by simply passing on information to caucus goers that was supplied by Carson or his campaign to CNN. This was then said to be a dirty trick, and Dr. Carson went out there and said he was righteously indignant and offended and so forth, and went so far as to make it look like he thought Cruz ought to fire somebody for making this happen. In the meantime, not one caucus goer has yet come forward and said, I intended to vote for Dr. Carson, but when I saw that tweet that Cruz sent out that he had left the race, I changed my vote. Not one person has come forth and said so. And I am here to tell you that if those people existed, they would have been found by now, and you would have seen them all over CNN, PMSNBC, and Fox. Ben Carson would have needed 25,000 votes. He ended up with 17,000. He ends up at a solid 4th place. He would have needed 25,000 votes to tie Rubio. Nobody is making the claim that he was cheated out of 25,000 votes when his total was 17,000. The CNN reporter is Chris Moody. Okay? So that's what happened. Now let's go to the Today Show today with Savannah Guthrie speaking with F. Chuck Todd of Meet the Press. And she said Donald Trump is accusing Cruz of stealing the election in Iowa. Number one, is there anything in the substance of that? And number two, is Trump's attack a smart political attack, do you think, Chuck?
I have to say, the more they fight, the more this helps one candidate. Not Ted Cruz, not Donald Trump, but Marco Rubio. The private polling I've been hearing about over the last 2 days post-Iowa indicates that Cruz hasn't gotten a bump, and I think partly because Trump has been beating him up. Trump's been eroding a little bit, and there's only one guy on the rise, Marco Rubio.
Okay. So F. Chuck cites private polling, meaning we're not allowed to know who, that says Trump's attacks on Cruz are working because Cruz isn't getting the bump that you would normally expect to see after a big win in Iowa, that Trump's numbers are eroding a little bit. But the big gainer happens to be Marco Rubio. And people are scratching their heads and I wonder how that's happening. Why is that? Rubio? How in the hell does Rubio get in this? What's happening here to cause Rubio to rise in the polls? People scratching their heads and looking in the deep, dark crevices of the sofa, trying to find what's happening here. And F. Chuck thinks that Trump's attacks on Cruz on this Carson thing are actually hurting Cruz, even though Cruz has apologized. But, of course, we're not finished. Last night on the record, Greta Van Susteren, by the way, a brief moment of pause here to congratulate Greta Van Susteren on her 14 years at the Fox News Channel. Do you remember what it was that brought Greta Van Susteren to the attention of the United States of America? Exactly right, Mr. Snerdley. It was the O.J. Simpson case. She was one of the first ever legal experts hired by cable news to come on and tell us what we were watching and explain the legal angle of it. At the time, I'll never forget, many of the camera shots of Greta Van Susteren were from behind. She had that long auburn blonde hair. And I remember people, gee, wow, who is that? We'd never seen a legal analyst on CNN. Long blonde hair, you remember? And then It didn't take long. We started seeing Greta on CNN, and she owned it. She had legal analysis that nobody else on CNN had because, of course, they weren't lawyers. And this gave birth into Jeffrey Toobin. He ended up there. But that she was actually the forerunner of the category of legal analyst on cable news, legal expert. She was the first. She spent some time at CNN and after a while moved over to Fox after having a successful interview and a series of conversations with Roger Ailes. And I think either today or yesterday is her 14th anniversary. So happy anniversary, Greta. We will come back and resume. Not lost our place. Pick it up right where we left off here when we get back. So I got a quick question. I want to go back just a little bit here. Audio soundbite number 7. Savannah Guthrie asking F. Chuck Todd, hey, Chuck, anything in the substance of this Carson Cruz Trump business, reporting that Carson was leaving the race? And number 2, is it a smart thing for Trump to attack Cruz on?
I have to say, the more they fight, the more this helps one candidate. Not Ted Cruz, not Donald Trump, but Marco Rubio. The private polling I've been hearing about over the last 2 days post-Iowa indicates that Cruz hasn't gotten a bump, and I think partly because Trump has been beating him up.
Stop it right there. What is this Cruz hasn't got a bump? We just had the story that the Iowa winner doesn't get a bump in New Hampshire. I just regaled you. I just informed you of the story that New Hampshire voters, they do not like to rubber stamp what comes out of Iowa. This is what we're told in the drive-bys today, that New Hampshire voters go in there, and no matter who wins Iowa, they're not going to win New Hampshire. New Hampshire voters go in there, and they make a point to make sure they vote for somebody other than who won Iowa. Right? So what is F. Chuck talking about here when he says that the polling data he's hearing about indicates Cruz hasn't gotten a bump? According to these guys, there is no bump coming out of Iowa. So it means one of these things isn't true. And I'll tell you which one isn't true. This silly assertion that New Hampshire makes sure to not vote for the Iowa winner is absolute flat-out BS. Stop and think for a moment how in the world that could be made a reality. Who would organize that? Who sends the memo out? To all of the voters of New Hampshire. All right, Ted Cruz won in Iowa. That means he cannot win in New Hampshire. You know what to do. Now get out there and vote. Really? Is that how it happens? Or does every New Hampshire voter consciously say, screw Iowa, I'm going to make sure that whatever happens here is not what happened there? That what they want us to believe? Of course there's a bump coming out of Iowa. Of course there'd be a huge bump coming out of Iowa for Cruz, especially given how it happened and what the expectations were. There'd be a huge, he was supposed to lose. He's supposed to come in second. There'd be a huge bump. Now they're trying to say there isn't a bump and they don't expect a bump. And yeah, Trump's attacks, boy, they're brilliant. They are really, really, really hurting Cruz. They're not really helping Trump much. And Rubio's picking up the pieces here and really moving forward. Now, here's the next bite. This is Fox News Channel with Greta Van Susteren last night. She's interviewing Trump. She said, what do you mean Ted Cruz stole the Iowa contest?
I think what he did is disgusting. He said that Ben Carson, who's a fantastic guy, had dropped out of the race during the caucus. He had dropped out of the race and vote for Ted Cruz. All of those people come and vote for Ted Cruz, and many of them did. I think it was a disgrace that he did it, and I don't think it should be even allowed. I think those votes should be taken away, and there were plenty of them.
Really? Well, what do we know? Again, I think I know a lot. I may not have heard everything. And now that I've brought it up, I'm sure it's going to happen. Sure as I'm sitting here, somebody in Iowa is going to pop up and say, hey, I intended to vote for Dr. Carson, but when I saw that Ted Cruz said that he was leaving the race, I said, well, okay, I'm voting for Cruz. But nobody has said that. I'm sure since I have pointed it out, somebody's going to pop up now. We head to the phones. Josh, Decatur, Illinois. It's great to have you on the EIB network, sir. Hello.
Hey, buddy. Good to talk to you again. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
To me, Trump ain't looking very presidential, whining about this. I'm still undecided, but why is it I'll just assume that all the votes went to Cruz. Couldn't Trump have benefited from Carson voters not showing up?
Wait just a second. This is the kind of stuff, you say that Trump isn't looking very presidential, and it's this is the kind of stuff that he does that has launched him. He doubles down when things like this happen, and people say it's incredible he's saying this. He doubles down on it, and he has been gaining. His support's been increasing. His appeal has been broadening as he does these things.
It just ain't plain to me. I mean, it might be. I think whenever he's attacking Democrats or attacking things that are against our values, but I don't see anything in Ted Cruz that that I would attack. It turns me off to him.
Well, I understand that, but if you are in the Republican primary and you expected to win Iowa and you didn't, and the guy who did is somebody you don't like anyway, and you got an opportunity here to point out that he's a cheater and a fraud, you'll do it, because what you want to do, you want to win New Hampshire. You're first, before you get to the Democrats, you got to knock these guys out. So you understand there is going to be, and there are going to be, vicious battles within the Republican Party. I agree with you that a lot of this looks childish, but realize that people benefit. That's the story of this campaign, that some benefit during all this.
Yeah, and he could have benefited too from Carson. I mean, I don't think you should assume that all the people that weren't going to vote for Carson automatically went to Cruz. Some of them might said, heck, I'll throw in Trump.
Well, look, the dirty little secret here, and I hate to overuse that cliche, Ben Carson does not appear to have been harmed greatly by this. He outperformed the Real Clear Politics polling app. Now, I understand that the polling is hit or miss, and that 13 of them were wrong. I understand. 13 polls had Trump winning. And I've got nothing against Dr. Carson. You know me, I think Dr. Carson's one of the finest men alive today walking this planet. This whole episode, nevertheless, boggles my mind. This whole thing, manufactured as it is, just boggles my mind. We're on the verge here, we conservatives, of wresting control of the Republican Party from the establishment and get sidetracked with this stuff. It isn't helpful. I wish it would stop, but I'm not running all these campaigns. We'll be back after this. Well, look at this. NBC has gone out and done a random act of journalism. You know what they found? Condoleezza Rice aides and Colin Powell also got classified info in their personal emails. Oh, yes. So you see, everybody did it. There's nothing to see here. We can move on from the Hillary email story. See? Greeting, folks. Great to have you back. El Rushmo and the Cutting Edge Societal Evolution. Your guiding light. Happy to be with you. Half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Again, the phone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushmo at eibnet.com. Yes, here we have a random act of journalism from NBC News. And the headline, Condoleezza Rice, aides, Colin Powell, also got classified information on personal emails. Yes! So you see, there's nothing to see here regarding Mrs. Clinton. Why? Colin Powell, the titular head of the Republican Party, one of the greatest moderates ever to have lived. If anybody will ever have a book written about them great moderates in American history, it will be Colin Powell. That book doesn't exist, by the way. You ever seen great moderates in American history? You just haven't seen it. Great line crossers in American history. The great compromisers in American history. You don't see those books, but you will see it about Colin Powell. State Department officials, this is the place where Hillary Clinton used to work, keep in mind. State Department officials have determined that classified information was sent to the personal email accounts of former Secretary of State Colin Powell and the senior staff of former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, NBC News has learned. In an interview with NBC News, Colin Powell challenged this, saying nothing that went to his personal account was secret. Condoleezza Rice did not respond initially to an interview request. In a letter to Undersecretary of State Patrick Kennedy, dated February 3rd, State Department Inspector General Steve Linick said that the State Department has determined that 12 emails examined from their archives contain national security information now classified secret or confidential. 2 of the messages were sent to Powell's personal account, and 10 were sent to personal accounts of people that worked for Condoleezza Rice. How timely! Right after a Democrat debate, do you realize that didn't even come up in the debate last night? Do you realize that? Not one, we got 150 FBI agents pursuing the case, not one question about this for Mrs. Clinton. Ben Jealous, the former head of the NAACP, says he's going to endorse Bernie Sanders. The endorsement's a potential boost for Crazy Bernie, who has struggled to gain traction against among African-American voters, though he has made small gains on Hillary Clinton. He's way ahead in New Hampshire, but after that he's nowhere, right? Crazy Bernie owns New Hampshire, at least right now, looks like it. But you get out of New Hampshire, move on down the campaign trail, and Bernie Sanders he's with the chuckwagon, sayonara. Right? Not there. Well, yeah, for now, I know. Well, I tell you, I was right about Hillary. I knew this was going to happen. She's having all kinds of trouble with women in this campaign, and specifically young women, the millennial women, and it was exactly as I forecast. And admittedly, this is not a tough prediction to make, but these young women of millennial age who have been raised on the fact that everybody's out to rape them on campus and that men are predators and society doesn't care, when they see what Mrs. Clinton's role was in supporting her husband, the sexual predator, and when they find out what her role was in destroying the women who came forth with allegations that her husband was mistreating them, they're not going to put up with it. They don't have any rock star connection to Clintons. They don't go back to the 90s and think the Clintons are the end all of American politics or America. They're not going to like, and they don't. Am I the only one who predicted that? No, come on. There have to be others who've seen that. But Snerdley says, well, I don't know why I'm the only one who predicted. It was flat out easy to spot. All you have to do is examine the rape culture as it on campus today and the general state of feminism today. And then you realize that when these women in the 90s were either not even born or not old enough to have any memory whatsoever, so they weren't affected by the national love affair that the media had with the Clintons and all this. I mean, there's no connection to them in that regard. And there's nothing in the current culture. There's nothing worse than a woman whose role is to make it easier for men to behave in their predatory ways. She was an enabler. She was an enabler of her husband. She knew that she was being cheated on. She's the most cheated on woman in America. These young women, and this is not something that they're going to end up respecting, and they don't. You know, there was a point in this thing last night that I thought was really telling about Hillary Clinton, and it's one of the reasons why I think she can be beaten in a general election. And I first started pointing it out during her book tour. I still can't believe she got $14 million. I can believe it. I know how these people establish this $650,000 to do a speech for Goldman Sachs. Now, let me explain the connection to you. Goldman Sachs, former CEO there, one of many, is a guy named Robert Rubin. Robert Rubin happened to be the Treasury Secretary during the Clinton administration, the first term of it. And that's all you need to know. All of these former CEOs at Goldman Sachs are a club. You got Lloyd Blankfein, you've got John Corzine, you got Rubin. I mean, they're all a club, and they all exist to perpetuate what their predecessors were doing. So the Clintons know Bob Rubin. They added to his resume by making him Treasury Secretary. He was able to parlay that going back to Citibank after he left the Clinton regime when Citibank was in big trouble, and it didn't help. He was not able to save it. He did not add to his resume, but it didn't matter. The resume had already been etched in stone, so at that level, people don't fail. And when they do in the Democrat side, they fail up. It's amazing. Like Jimmy Carter, the worst president ever, and he's one of the big stars of the Democrat Party these days. You really do fail up in that party. They herald their failures. They put them at the top of the totem pole. So anyway, there's the connection. So Goldman Sachs wants Hillary to come make a speech. They don't want to hear Hillary make a speech. That's not what this is. They want to figure out how to get $650,000 to her. Campaign donations, that's tough. Limits, reporting and all. Hey, I got it. Let's have her come give a speech. So they have her come give a speech. Nobody pays attention to what it doesn't matter what she says. She could come show up for 10 minutes, talk about knitting. It doesn't matter. The whole thing was nothing more than a ruse for them to be able to give her $650,000 because that's what happens in the establishment. That's how they take care of each other and scratch each other's backs and how they make sure each other stay rich. And Goldman Sachs was just one of many funneling money to Bill and or Hillary Clinton in this manner. So anyway, the question was brought up last night. Like Anderson Cooper said, $650,000 to do a speech? And explain that. And Hillary looked at the audience and kind of shrugged her shoulders. Well, that's what they offered. That's not what they offered. That's not how nobody's going to offer her $650,000 to hear her come. She will put you to sleep. She's a screeching bore. There's nothing charismatic, enigmatic about Mrs. Clinton would make you want to listen to her talk. Certainly not $650,000 worth. Trump might be able to get that after all this is over, but she never could. Her book deal, $14 million, another example of how it all works inside the establishment. People want to take care of Mrs. Clinton because she's going to remain in power, so here comes the publisher. Here's $14 million. Please remember us, Mrs. Clinton, when you become president, so forth and so on. She didn't sell any books. Came time for the book tour. Nobody shows up. She couldn't draw a crowd. And the reason is she doesn't have any readers. She doesn't have a connection with her audience. Like Jeb Bush. You see this just begging people in the audience to applaud? Begging people to clap. Could you please clap? Because there isn't a connection. I'm not mentioning this as criticism of anybody. It's just the way it is. Whatever you want to say about Trump, he has this connection with his supporters. There's a bond there. There is a connection. Jeb doesn't have it. Hillary doesn't have it. Any number. Lindsey Graham didn't have it. Chris Christie doesn't have it. It's rare. It's what makes performers or candidates, office holders. It's what sets them apart. You really have a connect. Bernie has it to one degree or another. Yeah, Bernie has it. There's a connection. Mrs. Clinton doesn't, and it was illustrated last night. This was, to me, stunning, and I think this is one of the reasons why I think she can be beaten. A man in the audience asked Hillary a question about end-of-life decisions. He said he had colon cancer, that it was terminal, that he was going to vote for her. And he said that he came to the town hall to ask her if she would speak broadly on the subject of terminal cancer and end-of-life decisions. And she didn't know what to do because she's not a warm, in-touch person. She doesn't know how. She's cold. She is distant. At the end of the question, she nicely thanked this guy, who was an elderly gentleman. She thanked him for his question, said she hadn't thought much about the issue, but it was really great that he was bringing it up. Now, here you had a dying man, an admitted dying man, standing right in front of a woman who says that she is and wants to be the champion of everyday Americans. This was akin to it's a little bit different, but it was kind of like the question Michael Dukakis got, but what he would do if his wife was raped. Remember that? Bernard Shaw asking, and Dukakis sat there and gave this clinical, left-wing textbook answer about protecting the rapist's rights, civil rights and legal rights, and making sure that he didn't go off the handle with emotion. And Bernard Shaw couldn't believe it. Governor Dukakis, I've just asked you a hypothetical. Your wife has been raped, and you didn't even raise an eyebrow at the prospect. You can't even get emotional. No, he had to answer it from the playbook. Well, Bernie, we must consider the rights of all involved in a circumstance like that. The rights of the accused. Of course, the accused is only the accused in our society. And I want to make sure that the accused was not denied his civil rights. People were appalled that there wasn't one syllable of even attempted fake outrage that in the hypothetical his wife had been. Well, that's what this reminded me of. The Dukakis question was from a journalist, Bernard Shaw. And Dukakis, he didn't talk about the inhumanity of the crime that he was to imagine perpetrated on his wife. He just was a disaster. See, here's a guy with terminal colon cancer, decided that he would travel to a town hall and ask Hillary Clinton a question. He's standing just feet away, several feet away. Now, most people watching this had to be filled with sadness and sympathy. The guy was reaching out. He got out of his bed to go see her. He thinks that he has such respect for her. He wanted to know. He was seeking some comfort, that what was happening to him was going to have some meaning to the country at large in the hands of Hillary Clinton as president. And Hillary Clinton, you could tell she was fumbling around, concerned that she wasn't prepared with a policy answer. She was looking for a policy answer like Dukakis was from the policy playbook. She hadn't even dreamed of a question like this. She didn't have a canned answer. She didn't display any heartfelt emotion for the guy. She didn't talk to him. She didn't empathize. She didn't ask him a single question. She didn't ask if she could speak directly to him as a human being. She didn't ask if there was anything she could do for him. She did not make a human connection with this guy who walked all this way to tell her he's dying. He's going to vote for her because he thinks that what's happened to him is happening to a lot of people, and she can take his experience and make something of it and help other people. And Hillary is sitting there trying to conjure up a policy-related answer. She didn't ask him any questions about his family. She didn't ask him what his life was like. She didn't ask him how he was dealing with it. Now, she wasn't mean. I'm not saying she was Nurse Ratched here. She just didn't know how to handle a stranger sharing his personal tragedy with her. She was clueless, folks. She hadn't the slightest, I think it illustrated the phony, baloney, plastic banana, good time rock and roller hype that liberalism itself is. Liberalism supposedly is where all of this compassion is. And where all of the understanding and the big-hearted love and so on. She was clueless. She hadn't the slightest idea. You could tell she was worried if she didn't come up with the right policy answer, it would hurt her. That was stunning to me. Okay, time for me to take a breath here. Now, what that means is we go to the phones. And this is Greg in Russellvania, Ohio. It's great to have you on the program, sir. Hello.
Hi, Rush. Great to be here. It's an honor and a pleasure to talk to you on my 5-2 birthday.
Thank you, sir, very much.
I just wanted to say that for all the laughs that he got, I don't believe that former President Carter's comments about his willingness to vote for Trump was a joke. I think he was dead serious about that. He wants somebody malleable, and we've had too damn many malleable presidents in my lifetime. It's time we got somebody up there willing to stand his ground and fight the fight until it's over and bring home a win, and not Trump.
Well, I think you're right. I think Jimmy Carter was being serious. I mean, Jimmy Carter's not trying to be funny. He doesn't know how to be funny. Has Jimmy Carter ever tried to be funny. He was being dead serious over there in the House of Aristocrats. All right. And he's out there saying what he doesn't like about Trump and what he likes about Trump and doesn't like about Cruz. Cruz is rock solid, rock ribbed. We're not going to change Cruz's mind. I mean, he's committed. But Trump, he's malleable. We can work with Trump. I would much prefer Trump over Cruz. Makes total sense if you're Jimmy Carter, that you would be petrified of a committed Reagan conservative. You'd be scared to death. Jimmy Carter basically is the failure he is because of Ronaldus Magnus. It makes perfect sense that he would want somebody walking in the shadows in the shoes of Ronaldus Magnus to lose. I think that's one of the greatest endorsements Cruz could have gotten. By the way, did you see, folks, that the Nobel Prize Committee has been advised that Donald Trump has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize? Well, so was I. I was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. When was this? 2000, it might have been 2007 or 2008. Landmark Legal Foundation nominated me for the Nobel Peace Prize, officially nominated. It was a real deal. That would have been 2007, 2008. That was the year Obama won it. I think it was the year Obama won it. And Obama won the Peace Prize on the come. And they have said that if they could, they'd take it back because he's been a war president. He has not been he's not stopped wars. 2007 is when it was. So Donald Trump's an august company now. He also has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Anyway, Greg, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Not enough time to be fair with another. Well, here's the way to look at that Hillary thing. Can you imagine if Bill Clinton had answered the question? If he would have walked over to the guy, would have hugged the guy, you would have seen a tear come down his face. You would have made some connection to health care and how it isn't working and how the Democrats are the ones to fix it. I mean, Bill Clinton would have owned that. Can you imagine? Everybody'd be crying. And here's Hillary fumbling around in her memory for some policy answer. You know, what would Alinsky say? What am I supposed to say? What's the Alinsky book on this? What's rules for radicals say when somebody's really, oh my God, he's not a Republican either. What do I do? What do I do? She was stumped. I don't know. That's a good question. That is a good. You are the first to ask me what I think of the Super Bowl. You're the first question I've had about the Super Bowl since a week ago Sunday. Not a single person has asked me what. Huh. Well, I said I didn't, a big deal, but not everybody heard me. There's no scuttlebutt about it. My point is, not even in my vast circle of acquaintances, friends, groupies, and so forth, there's not a single person that's asked me about the Super Bowl. I mean, not even if I'm going. I mean, usually, hey, you got any room left? Could I go with? None of that. Just an observation. Sal in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm glad you waited. It's your turn. How you doing?
Hi, Rush. Good, thank you. I just wanted to I had an opinion about Ted Cruz and Ben Carson. First, Ted Cruz, I think that if he wants to get over this Ben Carson issue, he needs to man up and do exactly what Donald Trump would do. Donald Trump would give this staffer a raise because this staffer did exactly what he was supposed to do. He didn't do anything wrong, and he did it very well. I think that Ben Carson, when if he is as mature and decent as we all think he is, then when it's time for him to drop out, he should endorse Ted Cruz.
Well, now I think, well, I should, because I don't know. I don't. The odds are that Dr. Carson was going to drop out. But I think he had a lot invested in Iowa, and he had a lot invested in New Hampshire beyond that. But then there's others who say, no, he's going to stay in this for as long as he can because there's an opportunity he's got. You know, former presidential candidate on your resume for speech making and TV appearances and so forth. Plus, I gather he's enjoying himself. He is enjoying the opportunity to get to meet people, travel the country, and have them meet him. This whole episode, however, is just, I don't know how to describe it other than it just comes across as childish. This is politics. Your point that if a Trump staffer had done this, it would have been such a heads-up move. It would have been right what is called for at the moment. Take out an opponent. By God, go for it. Give the guy a raise and mention his name. Well, it's too late for Cruz to do that because he's apologized. Cruz tried to move this thing along by apologizing because that's what Dr. Carson said he wanted. And furthermore, Senator Cruz did not blame it on the staffer. He took the full force of the attack himself. And a lot of people would have blamed the staffer. A lot of people would say, I didn't know this was going on, and I have fired the reprobate who did this. And I just want you to know that's not who I am, and that's not the values of my campaign, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen again. And to make sure it doesn't happen again, I have fired the putz that did it. Cruz did not do that. Apparently the apology wasn't enough, and it hasn't been taken. Let's go back to the audio sound bites. Here is Cruz. This is in Goffstown, New Hampshire, yesterday, held a press conference. During the Q&A, he was asked, can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts that Trump wants not only to do a redo of the Iowa caucuses, but thinks that your results should be nullified?
It is no surprise that Donald is throwing yet another temper tantrum, or if you like, yet another Trumper tantrum. It seems his reaction to everything is to throw a fit, to engage in insults, because he's losing it. Look, we need a commander-in-chief, not a Twitterer-in-chief. We need someone with judgment and the temperament to keep this country safe. I don't know anyone who would be comfortable with someone who behaves this way having his finger on the button. I mean, we're liable to wake up one morning and Donald, if he were president, would have nuked Denmark.
What? Nuked Denmark? All places to nuke? Well, what's interesting about this is always the way that the left used to go about criticizing Reagan. That Reagan was too dangerous, too immature, too dunce-like to ever put in a position where his finger would be on a nuclear button. That's always something that Democrats say about your average Republican being stupid, dangerous, immature. And here's Cruz turning it around and accusing Trump of being that kind of character. He wasn't finished. He had a little bit more to say about this.
The American people are not interested in this circus sideshow of insults. You know, my girls are 5 and 7. And I got to tell you, Caroline and Catherine are better behaved than a presidential candidate who responds by insulting everyone every day.
Ted Cruz, that got a lot of response, people like that. Now, when we come back, Cruz goes on CNN and tells the truth of the timeline here. What happened? That he didn't do anything, that it was the Carson camp that had to tell somebody that they were leaving the campaign. I mean, CNN found out from somebody, and that somebody was somebody in the Carson campaign. And the Rubio campaign found out who it is. Well, the Rubio campaign found out, and they added to it as well. It wasn't just Cruz. It was the Rubio campaign capitalizing on this prior to the Iowa caucuses. But it was a reporter named Moody, Greg Moody, Jeff Moody, whatever his name is at CNN. He had the original tweet that Carson was leaving the campaign and going to Florida. And was not going to, it was going to the National Prayer Breakfast and not go to New Hampshire. By the way, the latest is that Carson is not going to New Hampshire, even after the prayer breakfast. He's going to North Carolina. North Carolina. Now, we have nothing against North Carolina here, but the action's in South Carolina in terms of upcoming primaries. But Carson's going to go to North Carolina. He's not going to go to New Hampshire. At least not immediately. Anyway, all of this ball was put in motion by Carson's campaign with a tweet on CNN. So Cruz goes on and gives them the timeline, and they just couldn't handle the fact that he was telling everybody CNN's the reason all this happened. They spent the rest of the night last night calling him a liar. We have the preludatory sound bites. Share with you after this when we get back. Okay, first, before the Ted Cruz sound bites, and I have not forgotten, we got the story here on how it's immoral, USA Today, immoral for you to watch the Super Bowl because of the concussions. You're furthering the culture that's killing the combatants of the game. You are immoral if you watch this game. Details coming up. We have the audio of the exchange between the colon cancer guy and Hillary Clinton. I just want you to hear this. The guy's name is Jim Kinnan, and here's his question to Hillary.
I'm walking with colon cancer with the word terminal very much in my vocabulary, comfortably and spiritually. But I wonder what leadership you could offer within an executive role that might help advance the respectful conversation that is needed around this personal choice that people may make as we age and deal with health issues or be the caregivers of those people to help enhance their end of life with dignity.
Now, you see what this is about. I mean, this guy is terminal cancer. He's looking to Hillary to pick up this cause, and he wants to be involved in the expansion of this national discussion, death with dignity, end of life. And listen to this. This is just classic disconnect, inability to relate, to have any kind of just commiseration whatsoever with this poor guy.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for being part of this great New Hampshire primary process, and thank you for your support. And I really appreciate your asking the question. I have to tell you, this is the first time I've been asked that question. I don't have any easy or glib answer for you. I think I would want to really immerse myself in the ethical writings, the health writings, the scientific writings, the religious writings. I know some other countries, the Netherlands and others, have a quite open approach. I'd like to know what their experience has been, because we have to be sure that nobody is coerced, nobody's under duress, and that is a difficult line to draw. So I thank you. I thank you so much for raising this really important, absolutely critical question that we're all going to have to do some thinking about.
It was just, you talk about talking past the guy. That's why I said it was almost akin to the Dukakis rape question. And something else popped into my mind as I was listening to this that was akin to, and it popped out of my mind just as quickly. But what? It was. That's exactly what it was. This woman at a televised pro-Obamacare seminar at the White House, the average ordinary Americans, a woman comes in and asks Obama about her 100-year-old mother who wants a pacemaker and her will to live. And will we be making exceptions for people based on their will to live? And no. We can't get into such thing as a will to live. No. In most cases, we're really just going to have to think about giving them a pill. And it was just, well, that whole thing blew my mind. Citizen asking a president if mother can get a pacemaker. It's the president's business. But thank you for your question. Thank you for your support. I need to examine the writings. I need to examine the scientific writings, the ethical writings, the health writings, the religious writings. I want to look at what they're doing in the Netherlands, for crying out loud. And thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for our support for something we're all going to have to think about at some point in our life. Mrs. Clinton is never going to get to this. You know damn well she's never going to have this question. These people have gotten away for too damn long with this supposed ownership of big-hearted compassion and understanding for the downtrodden and the little people. And they haven't the slightest idea how to even relate. Thank you for your support. It's not why the guy showed up. It's what these politicians do. Everything has to be about them. It's just striking. I have to move the Cruz sound bites and see you in the next hour. Let me grab a phone call quick. That would be Andrew in Minnetonka, Minnesota. Hello, sir. Glad you're here.
Hello.
Hey.
Neoconservatives, Ram fans, dittos to you.
Thank you, sir, very much.
I think the whole bogus Iowa, the non-bump Iowa winning story is more of an effort to protect Hillary than it is to knock anybody on the Republican side.
Interesting.
And in doing so, not only are they protecting Hillary, they're protecting Ted Cruz.
Well, maybe. I mean, but I don't think that when it's all over, they're interested in protecting Ted Cruz. So that's the difference. What he's talking about, folks, is there's the conventional wisdom that's being reported in New Hampshire today with the drive-bys is that New Hampshire voters make it a point not to rubber stamp what happens in Iowa. Meaning, when New Hampshire sees how Iowa votes, they make certain to vote the other way. Meaning, there's no way Cruz is going to win here because the people in New Hampshire don't want to look like they're rubber stamping what Iowa did. So therefore, there's no bump. There's no bump for Cruz. He ain't going to get a bump. It may not have, well, if even won Iowa, doesn't mean anything. We hate Cruz. We're going to do everything we can to keep Cruz down. But his point is, well, we don't know who won on the Democrat side in Iowa. But by the same token, if they think Hillary won, then they can't go vote for Hillary. They got to vote Bernie. And his theory is they're protecting Hillary. She's supposed to lose anyway in New Hampshire, so don't make a big deal of it when it happens. And that's true. And the polling data says she's going to get skunked in New Hampshire. It's after New Hampshire that crazy Bernie really doesn't even show up anywhere, folks. I hate to tell you, but fastest 3 hours in media. Still a lot to cram in here, folks. And I'm feeling better. I think I was premature in thinking that my battery life crisis had returned. I think I nipped it in the bud. Like, I'm still cool. Which is, it's big. Believe me, it's big. We will be back shortly. No, I'm not going. Strangely, folks, I would just ask by a member of the staff if I'm going to the Super Bowl. Of course I'm going to be asked after I tell people nobody's asking me. No, I'm not going. We are back, folks. It's great to have you here, Rush Limbaugh and the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. Talent on loan from God. 800-282-2882, and the email address, if you want to send an email, is lrushbo@eibnet.com. USA Today. This is a story by Dylan Gwynn, and I'm assuming that it's a column as opposed to a straight-out news story, although who can tell anymore? Starts this way: because the rest of the world might not yet be completely convinced that the wussification of America has succeeded, USA Today unleashed a torrent of literary lameness by posing the question, is watching the Super Bowl immoral? There is mounting evidence and public awareness that playing football is bad for your brain. And now, to dramatize these statistics and grim anecdotes about ex-players succumbing to dementia and early deaths, we have Concussion, major Hollywood movie starring Will Smith. By the way, do you people realize where that movie ended up? I mean, it was never higher than fourth place, last I saw. And I don't think the NFL did that much to try to kill it. Yes, I know, I'm missing a chance to see Lady Gaga sing the national anthem live. And I'm missing a chance to see Coldplay at halftime. But we all have to make sacrifices. Anyway, it should be noted that this movie was a complete flop at the box office. It's also worth noting that Dr. Julian Bales, the mentor of Dr. Bennett Omalu, portrayed by Will Smith in the movie, and the co-discoverer of CTE, completely disagrees with Omalu in terms of how CTE affects young people. Anyway, this is not the story. Let me see if I can find the actual story that I had saved. That's somebody's commentary on it. Here it is. Is it immoral to watch the Super Bowl? And here, the new survey released in the run-up to the Super Bowl this Sunday suggests yes. that more Americans than ever before say they would not let their sons play football, yet football remains our favorite spectator sport. It's not even close, by the way. And there's nothing to indicate that it's about to change. You know, TV ratings are through the roof for football. Do you know why? I mean, there is a specific reason for this when matched against other things on television. And it's not just the game. The game is fun to watch. It's popular. But there's a reason. There's a singular reason, I think, it's my opinion, about why football ratings are through the roof and span demographics. Despite all this talk of injuries, despite all the sort of concussions and this kind of thing, this guy at USA Today actually does think it's immoral to watch the game now, particularly the Super Bowl. The reason these ratings are through the roof is because it's one of the few places, football and pro football, because it's the best. College football does okay, but it's amateur football, and that's fine. But pro football is pro football. It's the best. I mean, everybody in pro football is the fastest. Everybody in pro football is really good. There aren't any Appalachian states in the NFL, for example. Not even the Cleveland Browns. And it's simple. It's one of the few places on TV. And this includes news, by the way. It's one of the few places on TV that you can watch where the outcome is not known, meaning there is full-fledged drama. In police procedurals, I mean, you might like I know people that love the show Elementary. People love the show Suits. I mean, but you all, at the end, you know how it's going to end. They may take you through emotional ups and downs, and they may create a little doubt now and then. But for the most part, everybody knows how Law and Order SVU is going to end. Some weeks the perp's going to get away with it, and other weeks the cops are going to convict him. But in the National Football League, you have no idea. And when you have some games like we had in the playoffs this year, Steelers, Bengals, Packers, Cardinals, just adds to it. When you have seemingly impossible deficits to overcome with 90 seconds left, and you have two Hail Mary 60-yard touchdown completions, you add that to the drama that nobody knows who's going to. Then you add the gambling that's going on, not just gambling, but the fantasy sports that's being played. It's very understandable why football has such high ratings. Now, the critics are out there, oh, this is horrible because this game, it maims its competitors. And by the way, we're getting very close to this, and I want to remind you again, I predicted, here's how this is going to fall out in the coming years. It's exactly how this is going to fall out. Mark my words. No matter how much the players earn, no matter how highly paid they are, no matter how big a star an individual player might be, what's going to be said is that these owners and the bloodthirsty fans will be thrown in on this. Don't care. They are willing to see these guys literally risk their lives. And that's going to be the moral and emotional pitch. Which where this USA Today piece is starting from. How dare you watch a game that produces concussions in so many people it leads to suicide? Why, that's immoral. How dare you? How do you sleep at night knowing that you're helping perpetuate? This is the angle they're going to take. And then it won't be long. Somebody in the leftist community here has probably already figured it out. 78% of the players are African American. And you add that to the fact that these people are risking their lives. Yes, they're being paid a lot of money, but they're risking their lives. They're not just risking injury. Then you add to the fact most of the owners and the commissioner are white. And it isn't going to be long before this whole thing is going to be portrayed as Christians to the Lions or some other thing with bloodthirsty fans not caring what happens, and the excuse will be, hey, the players know what they're getting into, and hey, they're paid really well, so everybody back off. They're cool with it. But I know how this is going to happen. The left doesn't let go of this stuff. And everybody's, Russia will never happen. This is too big. There's no way a bunch of activists are ever going to take down this sport. There's too much money in it. The people involved are not going to just roll over and let it happen. And that's what every industry that has ever been attacked has always said. We're too big to fail. They can never succeed. They'll never pull this off. I give you big oil. I give you big tobacco. I give you big pharma. I mean, they're consistently targeted. Democrat Party enemies list and all that. So you just, the signs are all there. And I'll tell you what's going to speed it up. The unwitting sports drive-bys. These unwitting sports media guys who are all liberal and have all this compassion and want to be thought of as sensitive and big-heartedness, they're already getting on board the premise that this is a dangerous game and it may need to be changed. It's horrible. They're all pushing this concussion stuff. They can't help themselves. They're liberals. They all want the government to come in and take over regulating and controlling it and all this stuff. They just can't help themselves. They're liberals. So the very industry they derive their living from, they will unwittingly participate in discrediting, which is how it'll start, and in raising doubts about it. People will eventually begin to feel guilty about watching football. Long way down the road, but there are other things I can compare it to that they've succeeded in stigmatizing. How about, do you ever feel guilty that you may be using too much toilet paper, for example, after all this talk of the waste? Or take a pick. Take anything that the left attacks that the society uses in excess. You hear it enough. How about global warming? It's July and it's 110. Do you think, wow, man, we'd be right? I mean, it just, the subtleness, the psychology, it all, at some point, makes an impact on a certain number of people. So we will just see. Another time out here, we'll come back and get started here with them. Not teasing you, lots of other things here, in addition to the campaign that I wanted to make sure I got to, rather than just let this stack that I didn't get to keep accumulating each day. Be back with Ted Cruz, CNN, and this whole business of Ben Carson and the phantom voters after this. Okay, here we go. This is Ted Cruz yesterday in New Hampshire. He's got a press conference, and a reporter says, Senator, you condemned what your campaign did to Ben Carson just before the Iowa caucus. Will you fire or suspend anyone from your campaign for putting out misinformation?
Our political team passed on a CNN news story that CNN broke. The news story said that Ben Carson was not continuing from Iowa on to New Hampshire. He was not continuing to South Carolina. Instead, he was going home to Florida. That was a news story CNN had posted. And our political team passed it on to our supporters.
That's true, but it doesn't go quite far enough. CNN did post it. And their reporter was some clown named Moody. Well, reporter named Moody, Jeff or George or whatever. But where did he get it? See, this remains the area where people stop being interested. But how did CNN get hold of it? Maybe it was Greg Moody. Just think Moody, and you'll have the guy. But he had to get it from Carson. Had to get it from the Carson campaign. How's that know? And Carson was not going to New Hampshire. He was going home. As he said later, to get a change of clothes. He'd been on the road for 3 weeks. He had to go home and get a change of clothes. I've seen some snarky comments. Hey, Dr. Carson, have you ever heard of the laundromat? Have you ever heard of the dry cleaner? Some people have been snarky about this. What do you mean you got to go home and change clothes? But the point is, Cruz was right. CNN posted it, and they had to get it from somewhere, and they got it in the Carson camp. So, last night and during the day yesterday, CNN was not happy. We have a montage. They had to defend their reporting. They had to savage Cruz as a liar for hours last night. We have Anderson Cooper, Aaron Burnett, Dylan Byers, Brooke Baldwin, all talking about Cruz's campaign, telling voters that Carson was leaving the race.
Senator Cruz keeps saying that it all stemmed from a CNN report, which just is not factually correct. He's saying that CNN reported that the campaign was being suspended, and that's not what was being reported.
Do you think, though, that it does raise a question of character and integrity, though, that is important for people to understand? It's Ted Cruz's campaign, and everything that comes from it is a direct reflection on him, and he's blaming it on CNN's reporting.
Senator Cruz's claims about CNN are false.
Senator Cruz tries to throw my network, CNN, under the bus. That accurate report was disseminated on television and CNN Digital, and that was that. I'm going to call out BS if I hear BS.
And that was the lovely and gracious Brooke Baldwin there, saying that she's going to call out BS when she hears BS. Well, go back up to 13. What did Cruz say that has them all agitated? Listen again.
Our political team passed on a CNN news story that CNN broke. The news story said that Ben Carson was not continuing from Iowa on to New Hampshire. He was not continuing to South Carolina. Instead, he was going home to Florida. That was a news story CNN had posted. And our political team passed it on to our supporters.
Canay, it's exactly what happened. CNN posted it. What? Did the original tweet did not say that. Screw the news story. CNN put that tweet out there. That's what Cruz is talking about. Yet later on, after the proverbial excrement hit the fan, then everybody goes into CYA mode and see, hey, wait a minute, we reported he was going back to cars. Hey, wait a minute, I said I was returning after I got a clean clothes change. Hey, all that's happening here is that there was a tweet, and don't tell me tweets don't matter. That's all anybody does anymore. There's a tweet out there from a CNN guy, Chris Moody, that's his name, that Carson was leaving before the caucuses started. Now, CNN can deny this left and right. They can say, well, we didn't broadcast it. Your reporter did. Your reporter tweeted it. It may not have been on a CNN site. It may not have been part of a CNN newscast, but a CNN reporter put it out there. That's what Cruz saw. Anyway, you hear they are livid. Last night, Anderson Cooper 360. He's got Rick Tyler on from the Cruz campaign. Isn't it totally disingenuous if you say the big announcement we're talking about is he's going to speak at the prayer breakfast, and email is not Twitter? You have more than 140 characters. You could have just said Carson speaking at the prayer breakfast. Instead, you leave it, this mysterious big announcement. You Cruz people. You make it look like he's dropping out. Didn't you do that on purpose?
You know what I'm amazed by, Anderson, is that the story here is Ben Carson, instead of going to New Hampshire or South Carolina, went to Florida and Washington, D.C. If Ted Cruz had decided,
I know, and we talked about that.
A little R&R,
I agree.
Well, that would have been the story.
Right.
And everybody would have pointed it out, and it would have been the story. But because somehow it's different,
the story
Ben Carson
is also your candidate who's an evangelical who talks about the Bible and his belief in Christianity, perhaps lied and was completely disingenuous.
There you go. There you go. See, his holy roller. He is running his campaign like a revival hour, and he's a big Christian. He went out there and lied, and he's trying to blame it on us. That's what CNN. He's trying to blame it on us. Ben Carson does it. Ted Cruz points it out, and Cooper says, Ted Cruz, who talks about the Bible, his belief in Christianity, perhaps lied and was completely disingenuous. Did Ben Carson leave Iowa? Did Ben Carson say he was going to leave Iowa? Did Ben Carson say he wasn't going to New Hampshire and South Carolina? Yeah, fine. Did Ben Carson later say, I needed to go home and get a change of clothes? Has anybody stepped forward, even now, and said, hey, you know what, I intended to vote for Carson in the caucus, but I didn't when I saw what Cruz said that he left? Has anybody come forward and said so? Not that I've heard of. Does anybody think Ben Carson was cheated out of 25,000 votes and would have come in third place? Breaking news, bulletin. The press is reporting Dr. Carson is taking time off from the campaign trail after Iowa and making a big announcement next week. This is the email the Cruz camp sent out. Dear, breaking news, the press is reporting that Dr. Ben Carson... Did I grab your attention there? See, you thought... See, this is how it's done. You thought I had brand new breaking news, right? This is what the Cruz team sent out. Dear so-and-so, breaking news, the press is reporting Dr. Ben Carson's taking time off from the campaign trail after Iowa and making a big announcement next week. Please inform any Carson caucus goers of this news and urge them to caucus for Cruz. Snurdly thinks it's a dirty truth. You commend them for it, but it was a dirty truth. Okay, Cruz has apologized. And it should have been the end of it. Exactly right. Should have been the end of it. Let me ask you something. If Cruz had fired somebody like we know Dr. Carson wanted to happen, would that have been the end of it? Okay. Do you think Ted Cruz should give up his votes in the caucus or maybe redo the whole thing because he cheated and played so bad, dastardly a dirty trick? Okay, you don't think that the Iowa caucus should be redone. You think Ted Cruz should be sued for this dirty trick, even though he was born in Canada? Anyway, there's one more, but I've got to take another break here, folks. But there's just looks like a couple of more here from CNN on this whole thing. And then back to your phone calls. It's Open Line Friday coming up finally tomorrow, right? Get this big, we got a Democrat. Is it a town hall or a debate tonight? It's a debate tonight, and with all the Democrats, right? Two of them. We'll be back. Gail in Akron, I'm glad you waited. Great to have you on the program. Hi.
Oh, Rush. Since your procedure a year and a half ago or so, I have to tell you it delights me to hear you sing from time to time.
Well, thank you. You mean my ear procedure?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
And also, from time to time, a caller will say something that is very rare, and you give this low growl of a chuckle, like they picked up on a subtle hint you were hoping.
Yes.
So, yes. But the main reason for my call is that I don't know how the decision was made for Iowa to be first in the nation, but we are proud to abide by this decision and to serve our nation by narrowing the playing field so that New Hampshire can follow on our heels, and their votes are even more valuable because we narrow that playing field. And by choosing the candidates, Iowa is the breadbasket, the heart of the heartland, rural, agricultural, and then to follow that up with New Hampshire being in the midst of the political area of the nation, an urban area, the diversity of our lifestyles, for Iowa to say this and then New Hampshire to say something totally other. We're not insulted by the fact that we don't often choose the winning candidate. And then we follow through with South Carolina and then Nevada and Super Tuesday. That's the whole meaning of the process, is to get the diversity of the different lifestyles from around the nation and narrow that playing field.
So you're proud to be first. You're proud to be an Iowan that begins the winnowing process.
Yes, but it's very crucial that it is followed by New Hampshire. And the one thing about both Iowa and New Hampshire is that we are not swayed by the polls and by the media. We make our own decisions.
Well, that's obviously very true. That's clear because the polling data going into the Iowa caucus had Trump up by 4. And that was not the case. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I appreciate the call, Gail, very, very much. That's true. It's Iowa, New Hampshire, and then South Carolina, and Nevada, and then Super Tuesday. That's exactly right. She's exactly right. That's how it happens. And it's all very important. Brian in Greensboro, North Carolina. Hi, great to have you on the program.
Thank you, Rush. Long-time listener. Keep pounding dittos.
Thank you, sir.
My burning question is, who do you like in the Super Bowl? Big Panthers fan here.
A big who fan? You're a Panthers fan. You know, you're the first person to ask me.
That's what I wanted to be, the first one.
You're the first, and my gut answer is going to be a Panthers blowout.
That'd be nice. I'd like to see that.
And the only thing is, when the Panthers do begin to blow people out, they usually coast after that. Like they blew out Seattle in the first half, and Seattle came back in the second. They didn't score a point in the second half. And I know it bothered the coach. The Denver defense is going to be really crucial in Denver staying in this game, in my opinion. If the Denver defense cannot stop Cam Newton and that offense, I don't know how Denver wins.
Well, I'm hoping for the blowout, but you're right. We do have some issues when we get the lead.
Why do you want a blowout? Why?
Well, being a Panthers fan, you want to win.
Well, okay, I understand that. I was at the Super Bowl in 1988 that there has been a lot of reminiscing about. The Super Bowl in 1988 was San Diego. And it was the Washington Redskins versus the Denver Broncos. And it was a blowout. It ended up being, the Broncos were up 10-0, and the Redskins had the highest scoring second quarter in Super Bowl history. They scored something like 35 points on 18 plays. Doug Williams was the quarterback. Timmy Smith. Nobody had ever heard of Timmy Smith outside core fans of the Redskins. He got the call on game day because George Rogers, number one running back, was injured and couldn't go. So Joe Gibbs went to Doug Williams and said, I want you to tell. And he called him Douglas, by the way. Joe Gibbs called Doug Williams Douglas. He said, Douglas, I want you to tell Timmy he's playing. He'd probably get less nervous if he hears it from you. So Doug goes and tells Timmy Smith that he's playing. And Timmy Smith had a 200-and-some-odd yard game. And that game was over at the end of the second quarter. The number of points, the rapidity. And I was sitting in one of the end zones with a friend from Sacramento for that game. And it was a blowout. It was one of two blowouts that the Broncos were in the other one was the 49ers creamed them 55-10. I think in New Orleans, if I have that game right. But this is the game where I'm sitting in an end zone. It was the closed end zone at what was then called the Murph, Jack Murphy Stadium. And Herb Alpert is playing the national anthem. And they're coordinating a flyover of Navy jets from nearby Miramar that were going to fly over the stadium at low altitude at full throttle right as Herb Alpert ended the anthem. Well, from our vantage point, we could see those jets on what was akin to the downwind, or the base leg, then downwind, and turning on and final. And they were flying right towards us. We could see the formation way out there, and it looked to me like they were not going to make it in time. The anthem was going fast. Albert was playing. The Jets were still far off. And in fact, Albert finished soon. He had to hold that last note forever and ever on his trumpet. Big flag out there waving the entire field, covering the entire field. And this was my first flyby. I had never seen one of these. And these jets went over, and I had such a rush of patriotism. I have never felt anything like it. I just jumped. I was screaming. I started pounding my friend on his back like I couldn't believe. I'm screaming. It was the most incredible thing. The timing of that anthem ending and those jets flying over, and they were low, and it was loud, and I could hear back then. It was what I heard was real sound. And I was screaming, and I turned to my buddy long afterwards and said, how in the world can you ever see that and ever vote Democrat? And these two people in front turned around and stared daggers at me. It turns out they were from Washington, and they were huge libs, and they were not happy. And then the Broncos scored first, and it looked like they were going to blow the Redskins out. They scored on an Elway bomb to somebody down in the end zone where we were. And then that second quarter happened, and it was just the most amazing thing. So for some reason, they've been reliving that game because I guess some people say it's got some commonalities. But, man, if the Carolina offense shows up as it has in the playoffs, they're unstoppable. And I don't know that the Denver offense can match them in a shootout. So that's why the Denver defense is going to have to keep Denver in the game. Now, I know that's true of any contest, but it's become an offensive league and an offensive game. That's what I mean. It's going to be the Denver defense is going to have a super above average effort, in my humble opinion, to keep the Broncos in the game. Stranger things have happened, too, so we'll be back. Don't go away, folks. No, I've got nothing against Appalachian State, and I got nothing against Denver. I do not have a dog in this fight. It doesn't matter to me who wins. The guy just asked me if I was going to win. My instincts are Carolina, and it's based on no study whatsoever. Purely just reacting to things I've seen so far in the season. Don in Chicago, great to have you. You're last. I'm glad that you waited, sir. Hello.
Thank you, Rush. You've been educating me since November of 1988, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Really, very much.
The reason the left hates NFL or football in general is because it represents Americana. It represents tradition. It represents loyalty to country and the military. It's the same reason they despise NASCAR, Indy. I go to the Indy 500 every year, Rush, and like you just painted a perfect word picture from the Super Bowl, my heart jumps when they march the military men down the straightaway, hundreds of them, and then they open up the largest American flag in the world on the first turn in the beautiful green grass. My heart skips a beat, and that's why they despise it.
I have heard he's not the first to offer this opinion. I have people that tell me they don't like football because it's rugged, it's self-reliance, even though it's teamwork, it's patriotic, it's always got the anthem, a giant flag, the military is always there, and I've kind of poo-pooed that. But a lot of people I've had tell me they think that's really what bugs the left about football. It's just too celebratory or American. Back in a sec, folks. No, I don't think Trump is faded. Why would you? No way. No way. Wait. No. You watch. Not yet. We'll be back tomorrow. See you then, folks.